Welcome everyone to Your Messy Brilliance podcast of the first of 2020. I am so excited about this one because it's a dear friend of mine, and I can't wait to discuss her new book that was just released. I hope you're enjoying this new decade and set very incredible intentions. I did powerful intentions for the new decade that we have and are easing into 2020 with clarity. So today I want to introduce HeatherAsh Amara, who I have known for many years and has been an advocate and champion for me and for Women for One, and also for all women diving into their truth and their stories. So let me just tell you a little bit about her first. HeatherAsh Amara she's a warrior goddess mama, which I love that she's a mama and creatrix of the Warrior Heart practice. If you haven't looked her up, please do now. She's a teacher, such a wise and grounded spiritual teacher. She is dedicated to inspiring depth, creativity, and joy by sharing the most potent tools from a variety of world traditions, which I love. She is an author of many books that you can look up. It's on our site right now. You can glance through every single book: Warrior Goddess Training, Warrior Goddess Wisdom, and I love the word warrior, which we've talked about in past interviews, so check those out as well. And also the 7 Secrets to Happy and Healthy Relationships with Miguel Ruiz Jr. And the new book that we're going to talk about today, the Warrior Heart practice that just launched. So I'm really excited to talk to HeatherAsh about this book. Welcome, HeatherAsh.
Thanks so much, Kelly. So great to be back with you and with Women for One.
Yes, I'm really excited. So your book is called The Warrior Heart Practice, a simple process to transform confusion into clarity and pain into peace. And I just want to dive in and ask you the first question. I really want to dive into this book is about what made you want to write this book right now, like where you are in your life, because I know you share a lot of stories inside the book. So what made you want to write it?
It was really recognizing at a deep level how often we get stuck in our stories and feeling like as humans right now, we need all of us to be online with our creativity, with our passion, with our presence. And what keeps us from doing that often is the stories. And so the process actually completely dropped into my being fully formed as I was talking to a friend of mine. He was telling me this sad story of this really difficult relationship that he was in and the pain that he was in around it. And as he's telling me the story in all detail, I just looked at him. I was like, honey, that's actually not true. Like, I was there. This is what actually happened. And I reflected back to him the truth. And he was like, oh, you're right. Oh my gosh, I was so stuck in a story. And he would get clear again. And then literally 2 or 3 days later, he came back to me with the same old story and the same amount of pain. And I recognized how easy it is for us to get in the story and not even realize it and spend so much energy suffering. And so I prayed. I opened myself and I said, please, is there any way I can help my friend? And this process dropped in.
That's amazing. That's all you did. You just dug into your soul, right? And really asked.
That's exactly. I just asked. And it was from this deep yearning of wanting to help someone that was so precious to me. And then, of course, what I discovered is, oh, this works. This helps me. So I've been using it really systematically, I'd say, in my own life, and then bringing it to my students, to my friends, teaching facilitators and coaches. And so we've gotten to play with it and look at all the different places that it allows us to have more inner freedom, more choice, more presence, just by doing the practice.
Well, and I love that it's a program that's a simple process, but it's so unique and revolutionary at the same time, because I looked at the order of the 4 chambers, and I want you to kind of take us through the 4 chambers of the heart. First of all, how cool is it that you use the heart as that space for symbolism? Because it is where we come from for everything, with ourselves, and taken the 4 chambers and moved them into this process. Can you walk us through the process? Because I love it. And, you know, Women for One is all about the power of story and really looking at our stories, but then also moving into taking action and setting intentions as well.
Yeah, exactly. No, you don't go to your heart like, I really like my left ventricle the best. It's the most important part of my heart. You know, every part of your heart is critically important. And it's the same thing with the Warrior Heart practice. There's 4 different chambers, 4 different areas of our lives that we're focusing on. And none of them is better than the other. They all are really important. Mm-hmm. And where we start is whenever you're triggered or upset or confused, whenever you feel off, the first chamber is the feeling chamber. And the question in the feeling chamber is, what am I feeling? What's happening in my emotional body? And it's beautiful because what you do is separate out the feeling from the story. So the second chamber is the story chamber. The first chamber, you sit and listen to your body. What's happening? Where's the feeling in my body? And you're not trying to explain it, understand it, fix it, blame somebody else, feel ashamed of it. You're just learning to separate out the feeling from the story and have the feeling in its pure form.
So it's like a witness somewhat, or are you really diving into your emotions?
You're really diving into your emotions. You're giving yourself permission to feel it, whatever it is.
No matter what it is, without judgment, as much as you can.
Exactly, no matter what it is, without judgment. Yeah. And what most of us do is we spend a tremendous amount of energy exiting our emotional body, distracting ourselves, being addicted, you know, cleaning the house. That's one of my favorites. And taking ourselves away from the emotions because they're uncomfortable. And we often have a story. Sometimes we have a story, I shouldn't have emotions, or that's a bad emotion, or I'm going to get stuck in that emotion. Sometimes we make up stories, well, if I'm a spiritual person or if I'm on a healing path, I shouldn't have those negative emotions. They're bad. And all of those stories impact us and keep us separated from ourselves and keep us distracted and in pain, actually.
And before you move into the other chambers, what I love what you just said is a lot of people that I've spoken with, a lot of women at Women for One, when they talk about stories, they're like, well, I have a lot of stories. But I believe, and I know you believe, that the stories we tell ourselves that we're bought into, if we don't bring an awareness to what those are through our feelings, we can't move forward. They're like almost obstacles they're different than stories or experiences we've had. They're the stories we tell ourselves. Would you agree?
I would. And it's also this how we tell ourselves a story about the experiences that we had.
Right. Do you teach us how to reframe that a bit? Or
yes, absolutely.
Okay, but that's different, right? So this is just in the moment feeling as much as we can without distraction and allowing for that feeling to arise. That's the first. That's the first chamber. It's almost like if you know somebody who's really ill or even who's dying, the presence and the love you would bring to holding that person's hand and showing up with them is the same presence and love you want to bring to your emotional body, which is, how are you feeling, sweetheart? Tell me. Okay.
So
good.
Yes. And then once you've let yourself feel and mapped it out in your body, like, okay, I have grief and it feels like pressure in my chest, and I'm also nervous and that feels like a contraction in my belly, whatever that is, then you go to the story chamber. And the question of the story chamber is, what am I telling myself? And so excavate, explore, be curious about what's happening in my mind. What's the story that I'm telling? And you don't want to make the story better or pretend you don't have a story. You want to go into the story, go into the judgment, go into the fear, to go into whatever's there and name it. And I like to think about it, we're being archaeologists. So we're going into the story chamber, and in archaeology, like, you couldn't imagine somebody going, okay, I've done a dig and I found this top layer and we found a shard and I'm done. Yay!
No, you wouldn't. Right.
You keep digging. You keep looking at the history, the layers. It's the same thing with the story chamber. There's going to be a story that presents itself, and keep going. Where else have you sensed a similar story in your life, or what else is it connected to? And the truth is, our stories get really tangled. So the stories can have many different threads or many different chains. And like, if you have a bunch of necklaces and you throw them in a bag and you walk around for 5 minutes and you pull the necklaces out,
right,
right? You know that. And all of us are like, oh yeah. And that's what happens with our stories is there's a chain of an event that gets linked to an older experience. They then tie together and they make these incredible knots is what causes us to suffer.
That is such a great metaphor because I've actually used that before. And sometimes I go into confusion because of those knots.
Yes.
Right. I dive into that confusion, and when I feel confusion, I know that's a red flag for my story is in a knot and I need to get more awareness of it. That's my hit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's so, so true. And that is
confusion's a beautiful thing. Confusion's kind of cool. If you can look at confusion in an awareness perspective in such a different way than, oh, I don't get it, and then avoid it, like really dive into that confusion. Do you think that would be helpful for people?
It's absolutely. And that's what I found is really important, that as we're moving through the world, that we pay attention. Where am I confused, or where am I feeling numb, or where am I withdrawing, or just to watch where we start going off course. And often confusion's a really big sign. And what starts to happen is you're sharing is we start getting excited, like, I'm confused, cool. There's a story that's tangled.
Right.
Yes.
Because it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for growth, right? And understanding and awareness of the story we've told ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. And so we go in with great curiosity to start to unearth the story without judging the story, making the story wrong, without trying to spiritualize the story, make it better. Like, just look at the story.
Get real about it. Yes.
Get real about it.
Be honest. Yeah. Okay. And so then the next chamber, where are we?
The next chamber is the truth chamber. And what most of us do is we step into the truth chamber, we write a better story, and we call it the truth.
Right.
So we want to learn what's the difference between a story and the truth. And I've found two main ways. The first way is that the truth is always incredibly simple. It's one sentence with a period.
Okay.
So anytime we have a comma or a semicolon and we start talking again, we're back in story.
Okay, let's clarify. But stories aren't bad, right? They're not.
No.
I love having this conversation with you because, stories are stories. But the truth is different. Truth is more simple. So you can start to identify what truth is versus the story if it's more simple. Is that one criteria? I'm just trying to break it down.
Yes, that's one criteria. It's simple. And there's a period at the end. And also, there's a sense of release in the body. There's a sense of openness in the body. Even if you don't like the truth, you still feel like, okay, got it.
That's it.
Yeah, right. That's it. And I know we are so wise. Our bodies, our beings, our soul knows what's true.
Right. And I talk to a lot of women though, and along with me, there's a lot of time, and that's why I love the word clarity, in your title, a simple process to transform confusion into clarity, because that confusion is such a great thing. But sometimes, like you said, our bodies are so wise. It is hard for us to have clarity, right? And to understand what truth is versus story. I mean, I'm still there sometimes where, I get confused and I'm like, wait, what is my truth? What is my truth around this? And so the signs are feeling it in the body, right? It's simple. What else? I'm like trying to learn from you. I'm pretty excited.
and there's a clarity that enters when you have the truth. It feels really spacious. So how I vision it is the story chamber is usually really crowded and there's a lot of voices trying to hook your attention. The truth chamber is quiet, spaciousness, lots of light. I think about it as a difference between, like in my vision, my story chamber is like this super overcrowded library that has all the rules and the experiences, and there's a judge in there going, okay, we're going to pull this book out and look at.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
Is that funny? Yeah. So that's just my vision. And it feels like that. I feel anxious when I'm in the story chamber a lot of the times, or I feel justified. There's like,
that justification, that, false pride, right? Like this is, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I have to defend this. Whereas for me, the truth chamber feels like this incredibly beautiful, very simple space with light coming through the windows and everything's clear and in its place. And so when I have that feeling in my body, I'm like, okay, that's true. That's the truth. And for people that are really attached to the story, or there's still a lot of emotion connected to the story.
Mm-hmm.
What you might start with, what I always tell people to start with is, I am breathing. So the truth, if you say to yourself, I am breathing, period. Take a breath.
I'm writing that down. I am breathing. Everyone write this down. Yeah.
That's true. That's always going to be true. So that's an excellent place to start. Even if you can't see any other truth, just stay with I love that. Breathing.
Because then you can kind of feel, as a feminine being, you can feel in your body what that feels like as truth. Right
exactly. There. Exactly. Yes. And then you can open the space for more truth to arise.
Ooh, that's just such a simple exercise. And I love about your book, you do have these simple exercises in it, along with also incredibly vulnerable sharings by you, which I just think it's so necessary as a teacher. You know, you've walked this, you've lived this, haven't you, HeatherAsh? I mean, even in the Truth Chamber chapter, you have incredibly vulnerable stories of yourself and of others.
Yeah, I learn when people tell me stories that they've gone to the other side and pulled the wisdom from. That is such a great way to learn. And so when I was writing the book, I had put a couple stories in of myself, but I remember I gave it to my agent and she's like, we need more of you. And I was like, all right, I'm going in. And I'd literally be writing the book and writing a story and feeling nauseous and like scared. And I'd be like, this must be really good. Like I must get. It's so valuable. It's so valuable.
It's so valuable to share those stories and share the process, share the wisdom we've gained. And that vulnerability though really shines through in this book more than any books I've ever read of yours. I mean, and I love all your books, but this one feels like I know you, the core of HeatherAsh, by those just small, even though they're vignettes, like they're just, wow, you just narrowed it down like a polished diamond. Really, that's what it feels like to me. Yes. And then, you know, speaking of the story, before we move on to the other chambers, you know, I've worked with women from all walks of life. And one thing I've learned is we have a lot of stories that are connected to trauma.
Yes.
And it can be very difficult for us, all of us, including myself and you, I'm sure, to work our way out of that trauma. And, you know, how can you use this practice to work your way out? I mean, I know you're sharing with me these different ways, but for women specifically that have been in trauma, is it the same practice or are they more gentle? What would you suggest?
Yeah, it's such an important question. So we found by working with people that have trauma that the best thing to do is start in the truth chamber. So we don't want to use a practice to re-traumatize ourselves. And sometimes people will get into like, oh, I'm supposed to feel my feelings or I have to look at the story. But doing that only creates more trauma. So if you're in a traumatic episode, if you're lit up and you're in trauma, the thing to do is to start with what's true right now. I was talking to a friend of mine who had a history of sexual abuse and she was in her kitchen washing her dishes and all of a sudden she had a total flashback and was in it. You know, no trigger, just boom, all of a sudden she was in. And she went to what is true here. And she grabbed onto the sink and she took a breath and she's like, I'm in my kitchen.
Right.
I'm safe. I'm washing dishes. I'm breathing.
I'm breathing. Right.
And I'm breathing.
Yeah. I'm breathing.
Yes. And I'm breathing. And so she waited and that helped her body to calm down. And then she was able to go, what's my intent? Which is the fourth chamber.
Right.
And then come back around to then look at the story and explore the feelings. But first you have to get yourself into the present so you have some capacity to hold yourself so you're not re-traumatizing. Because trauma is a nervous system. It's not a story.
Right.
The story's gotten tangled in there, but it's actually a reaction from the nervous system. And that has to be addressed first and then to look at the story.
I think that's so incredible. And it's such a great practice for any woman that's gone through any kind of trauma or any person, that's gone through any kind of trauma. I mean, I remember just watching the movie Bombshell recently and sitting in, because there were some really powerful scenes and I'm an incest survivor and sexual abuse. And so I was watching this one scene and I was triggered and I was back in my abuse in that moment.
Yes.
And the thing is, having this tool, just this simple tool, what is true for me right in this moment. I think I do that intuitively now because I'm so far removed and I've done a lot of work around it. And still, like you said, it's a nervous system. I felt it in my body. Yeah. And so asking myself, what is true for me right now? Here I am. It's a grounding practice. Here I am, right? I'm right here. I'm safe. Telling my body that, telling my emotional body, my physical and my psychic body, right? Would you say?
Yes,
You're
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that you can then get to the truth of what do you need now?
Oh, I love that. What is it that I need? So after you get what is true for me, what do I need in this moment to feel safe, to what? Just need in general.
Yeah. And that's basically like you're then naming the intent.
Okay. Well, we're going into that anyways, right? We're moving into the intent chamber.
Yeah. That's the fourth chamber. And that helps to guide us. So once you have one or more truths, which may just be I am breathing, but you may also have created the space for more truths to arise, and you go into the fourth chamber, and you can see the process gets more and more simple. So in the intent chamber, it's one word that's your intent, which is where you're going to put your focus around the situation that you're unraveling. So your intent is not, I want them to be different or life should be different. Your intent is, I want to bring more compassion. I want love. And that's your commitment to yourself of what quality you're going to practice to help you unravel the situation.
And you can use this for anything. What is it that you need? What is your intent? Moving into any situation in your life.
Any situation. This works for relationships, finances, chronic illness, trauma. As we've said, it works with children. So any place that you're having a difficult time staying completely in, and your intent is so beautiful because it's your North Star. It gives you a focus. And the image I had the other day is like life is almost like an ocean that sometimes it's calm, but sometimes the waves are really rough and it's stormy. And when you're in your story, it can be very stormy. And so having your navigation of I'm pointing my ship and my awareness towards that intent then helps you stay focused as you navigate through the waves of your own story or the larger story that you're in. Because sometimes it's not just your story, it's your family's story, or it's the culture story that you're in the process of unraveling.
And it can get all very, like you said in jewelry, very raveled up. And it's bringing to mind, a challenge I just addressed and using the intention. I want to ask you, this is just popped in my head. So I just, haven't really had a relationship with my mom for years. And I went to see her this weekend while I'm visiting North Carolina for business. And what was fascinating was to get that space gave me more clarity about what my intention was for this, and the other word that comes up for me, and I'd love to ask you about it, is boundaries, because my boundaries were so confused because I didn't understand, and I'm telling myself the story and I was confused. And so getting that separation, that space really gave me better boundaries for myself to self-care and set the intention I want to move into the meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Because you had a clear intent. I'm guessing, just knowing you, right? That you wanted to heal it inside of yourself.
Me.
And that
not try to fix my mom, not try to change the situation. This is about me. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And that beauty of then I need space. I need to create some boundaries and coming back around then to start to refine it.
It's amazing because don't you find that a lot of us in this world, including myself, I'm guilty of it, want to change the situation or change other people or project our stories onto others? How do we come back to ourselves with this process?
Setting your intent is key, because what you'll notice usually when you go to truth and go into intent is the places where you're trying to create a story that they need to be different, or the situation should be different, or they need to take a particular action. And when you bring your awareness back, you're like, okay, truth, this is about me. I can't actually fix anyone else. And then what's my intent? And that intent then guides you in your actions. So again, you're back taking responsibility for yourself. And it's almost becomes joyful to then say, okay, how am I going to creatively now go back into the situation and start to unravel it or create more spaciousness for myself?
Yes. One of my teachers said to me years ago, I love the ocean visual that you gave. She said, someday, Kelly, you will look forward to riding those waves instead of being terrified by them.
Exactly.
And sometimes still I'm afraid, but it's baby steps, right? It's a process. This is what you call this process, this warrior heart practice is a process.
It is a process. I was been laughing. It's not called the warrior heart finish. It's called the warrior heart practice, because you need to practice and keep bringing it into your world.
Right, definitely. So what is your hope for women and anyone that does this practice? What is your vision and your hope that this book and this process will bring to the world?
My vision is as we start to clean up the old stories and make more space, live more in the truth, focus our intent, and as we start to heal the old emotions, release the backlog of emotions that so many of us are carrying, that we then open to more creativity, more joy, more presence. The world right now needs us at full capacity, as I see it. And a lot of times we're carrying these stories and these emotions that really bog us down. So my prayer and my hope for the practice is that people use it so that they're then able to be in challenges or in situations where they're like, all right, I'm ready. I can do this. I know how to unravel this. And they can also bring their creativity back to the places. We have so many challenges in our world right now, in our communities, that the more of us that have vision and creativity and intent that we can bring through the gifts, that we can be fluid and flexible and listen to what's needed in the moment rather than being stuck in the past, then we'll be able to face the challenges and really work with each other and with guidance, larger guidance, in order to make change.
That's so beautiful. And one question evolved out of that for me is, how do you define creativity? Because you said the word creativity many times in there. And so what is that for you?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I love creativity. That creativity is not like I'm an artist and I can paint or I write books. Creativity is how you respond in new and different ways to challenges or to things that arise in your life. And what we usually do is a challenge arises and we go back into an old pattern. We judge ourselves or judge others, or we feel victimized by it. And when we're in flow with ourselves, a challenge arises and we're like, all right, let's try something different. And we're willing to explore and play with it. We're willing to make mistakes. And that's something
it's
else.
Like that bamboo, like you're flexible and you're willing to explore, because you know that exploration is going to take you into such a brave new world in a different way. It gets exciting, that creativity, right?
It does. It gets really exciting. And we're no longer afraid. You know, we may have fear, but we're not afraid of the fear. It's like, oh, there's fear present. Hello, fear. Okay, let's keep moving.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that, because I was literally driving to my mother's and I felt this come up, and I'm not one of those people that just doesn't do something after I've said I'm doing it. And I called my husband and went, I don't want to do this. And I pulled over and he's like, well, you don't have to. And it was the best thing he could say. This is a choice.
Yes.
And I went, okay, now I can do it.
Thank you.
The fear came up. I noticed it. I owned it. And then I went, no, I could make a choice not to do this. And I'm making a choice to do this for me, not anyone else. So that fear can be present and you can still make the choice to move forward.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not that the feelings are bad. It's that we start to embrace that there's feelings, there's story, there's truth, and there's an intent. And as we go back through the process and you start to unravel the story, there's still maybe feelings that arise, and that's totally fine. But now you're in a relationship with them that you have choice. And how do you want to navigate it going forward?
That's why I wanted to dive into the creativity piece, because a lot of people think they're not creative, but this is my creativity. So I'm so glad you clarified what that creativity is for the community, because a lot of people think about it as just being an artist, or you can be creative in every way of your life, right? And dive in.
Yes, absolutely. And we can learn to be more and more creative in relationship to our life when we give ourselves permissions to try, to not need to be perfect, to make mistakes, to explore. All of that enhances our creativity, because often we have a story that we're not creative, or that we have to do it perfectly, or that we're not allowed to make mistakes. And so that's part of the big untangle that we're in the middle of. And then we really start living.
Yes, with joy and passion and purpose. It's awesome.
Yes, it is so awesome.
So HeatherAsh, you have something exciting coming up with the Shift Network that we're promoting at Women for One as well. I wanted to talk about on January 29th. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm doing a deep dive on the Warrior Heart practice and going much more in depth with each of the chambers, doing a meditation as well. It's a really beautiful meditation to help walk people through the chambers with a particular issue that they're working with. And so that is January 29th. It's called Discover the 4 Chambers of Your Warrior Heart. And I'm so happy to be partnering with you and with Women of One for this online event. So it's free. Anybody can sign up.
I'm really excited about it. The Shift Network is doing it with you as well. And if for anyone that really wants to dive into a book that's grounded, practical, but also really integrates those ancient spiritual principles in a grounded and practical way that we can use in today's world, get this book. I love, when I said to you, is there any, your vision? Think about HeatherAsh's vision and come up with your vision for how you want to live your life. And I really believe the Warrior Heart practice can move you through that space very easily, giving you this process of the 4 chambers of the heart. I love it, HeatherAsh, and I'm so honored you agreed to speak with me today about this. And is there anything else you want to say that you can tell my community where they can find you?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. HeatherAshAmara.com. So my website's the best place to get info on what's coming up and all the different events and such. And I also there's also the Kindle version available for the book, and I also read the audio. It was my first time getting to read one of the books. So that's available on Audible and all the places. So that's a fun
you
way.
Hear HeatherAsh's voice. I love hearing your voice because there is this place in you. And I didn't say this during the interview, but I was with you I got to be with you for a day when you were in Seattle. And there's just something about you that allows, like, you just go into flow so easily. I was like, everything flowed when you were here. Like it just, and I was like, I want to flow more in my life like that. It's just, there's this flow that's so powerful that you just go with it, go kind of, I have this vision of this river just flowing and you don't resist it. And so then the universe kind of provides for you. And I love that about you. And I just yearn to hear your voice because it's so clear and it helps me resonate with that clarity and flow. So thank you for doing this for all of us.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. I'm so happy to have this book in the world.
Yes, we're so excited. So get her book, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. Check out the Shift Network on January 29th and her program with that. And HeatherAsh, thank you again. It's so wonderful to speak with you.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Always great to be with you and with Women for One. All my love. Yay!
Yes, take care. Bye.